Look, my question is regarding some correspondence that I wrote that was written to the Attorney-General last year regarding the failure of the head of the Nacc, Commissioner Brereton, to disclose a conflict of interest. And it is our belief and my belief that given that he failed to disclose a conflict of interest, he should have been removed from head of the National Corruption Commission. I'm just wondering whether or not the Attorney-General's office has a position on the fact that Commissioner Brereton didn't actually disclose the conflict of interest and if he should stay in his role.
Senator, I think that's a question for the Minister.
Okay, fine.
Could you repeat the question, please, Senator?
You're welcome, Minister. So effectively, I'll just read some of this out. A Nacc investigation found Commissioner Brereton guilty of misconduct because despite declaring a conflict of interest in relation to robodebt, the Commissioner stayed comprehensively involved until the decision had been finalised. The investigation found it was due to a mistake in law, but that finding has no credibility whatsoever. Commissioner Brereton is a former Supreme Court judge and the head of the federal corruption watchdog, and conflict declarations are a fundamental part of the judicial process. It is incomprehensible to suggest that the Commissioner made such a basic mistake. Commissioner Brereton was quoted in the media saying, "Perhaps the most important lesson is that we are not the best person to manage our own conflict of interest." That is an outrageous statement and has no credibility whatsoever.
That's your assertion, Senator?
Yeah. Parts of what I just read was a letter sent to the Attorney-General, but I'd just like to know what the Attorney-General thinks about the fact that we've got the head of a National Corruption Watchdog, former Supreme Court judge, that couldn't disclose a conflict of interest, or did disclose a conflict of interest but stayed in the role anyway, didn't excuse himself.
Well, I mean, the first observation I would make about that is that there has been disclosure of that conflict. It has been examined, and from my understanding, you'll appreciate this is not my portfolio area, Senator, but from what I understand has occurred here is that the matter... So Mr Brereton made a decision not to further investigate a number of people involved in the so-called robodebt issue. That decision was challenged. An issue had been raised about conflict of interest, and as a result of that determination, the National Anti-Corruption Body is now examining the issue as to whether there was inappropriate behaviour in that robodebt process. I would have thought that's an acceptable outcome in the circumstances. Mr Brereton may have made the observation, as you've just quoted, that perhaps the individual themselves are not the best persons to make a determination on these sorts of issues. I don't think that's...
But surely if you've got a conflict of interest, you disclose, you step aside.
Senator, I very quietly listened and in fact asked you to repeat your question so that I fully understood what you were asking me. From time to time, in ordinary court proceedings, judges are required to make decisions about whether they should absent themselves from the course of hearings, decisions about conflict of interests. I don't think there's anything particularly unusual about what's gone on here, and I think to the extent that there may have been issues, those issues have now been resolved by the processes. So I suppose the main observation I would make is that the processes have been robust enough that the correct outcome has occurred, and The investigations that perhaps should have started earlier are now underway, and at some point into the future we will get a result of whatever inquiries the anti-corruption body has found.
Can you see how
Senator
this...
Rennick, before you continue, I can't vet your questions, but I do have to make sure that they are relevant to the portfolio that we're asking questions about. Senators essentially dismissed the Nacc last night because we weren't able to get to them from the hearing. Questions relating to the Nacc are relevant to when the Nacc is appearing. Other senators won't have the opportunity or wouldn't have had the opportunity to ask questions about the Nacc. I don't want to jump back and forth between our program for an agency that we have dismissed. I'm trying to let you ask questions that are relevant to cross-portfolio. I'd also note that the Minister appearing today comes prepared and briefed to talk to the agencies that are appearing. Nacc was not scheduled for today, so you might need to be mindful of that when you're asking your questions. If you have questions relevant to cross-portfolio, please put them. Otherwise, if there are questions more broadly for Nacc, unfortunately, we don't have an opportunity today to ask those questions.
Okay, thanks, Chair. I'll just finish with one
Chair, just
simple question.
On that, I wouldn't. I appreciate your ruling. I wouldn't want Senator Rennick to think that I in any way don't want to answer his questions. And every question has an answer, and I'm prepared to assist the committee in ensuring that all the questions that the senators have get answered in the
you're a good man, Donny.
Thank you, Minister.
But no, seriously, seriously.
But order. Yeah. Can I just be clear, though, serious, Minister? Thank you for that, and I know that you would be very willing to answer those questions. I am more concerned about the other senators that are not here, who I will hear from shortly if they do not get a chance to ask questions about the Nacc.
I understand, but I just wanted to make it clear the government, will answer every question
Senator
that we're asked.
You have the call.
Okay, just one, thanks. But I guess it's the perception in the public that we want to make sure we maintain the utmost standards of independence and scrutiny, and we've got our own Nacc commissioner failing to remove himself when he had a conflict of interest. And I guess it's the pub test here. So while we may not know the ins and outs of the details, it's the pub test of the whole point of this National Corruption Commission was to crack down on things like conflicts of interest and little bits of grey areas and things like that. Do you think that it's
with respect, Senator, the whole point of the Nacc was to root out corruption in our public service, in our politicians, and I think that's what it's doing, to be honest with you. I think it's doing exactly the job that we, gave it. I mean, I would remind you that the Nacc got the support of both the government and the opposition when it was established, and I think it's doing its job.
Okay, I'll leave it at that. Thanks, Chair.
Authorised G. Rennick People First Chermside.